Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening from wherever you're logging in today. I would like to welcome you to the IKI Thematic Selection Procedure online seminar. My name is Sarah Marianne Odera, and I will be your moderator for today. Next slide. I would like to start by thanking all of you for taking the time and joining us today. I can see many people from different parts of the world. Thanks for joining us, people from US, from Ghana, from Ethiopia. Thank you so much. We also have people from very different organizations today. Some of the organizations we have worked with before and are joining us today. Thanks IUCN and FAO for joining us today, and Stockholm Environment Institute. I can also see different organizations that we have not worked with before. However, I would like to thank you for joining us, people from Plan International, Action Aid, Network West Africa. Thank you very much for joining us. To start us off, I would like to go through a few netiquettes for today. We have switched off all cameras and the microphones. However, you're able to reach us through two buttons that you can see at the bottom of your screen. One is the Q&A button that I would like to use or request you to send us content-related questions using this Q&A button. All participants are able to see the questions that are put forward by the other participants. Another function that is possible is you're able to vote or you're able to rate the questions that have been put forward. Kindly rate them accordingly, because we will use these to see which questions are very important to you. Another button that is there is the chat icon. Kindly use this icon to ask us questions in relation to any technical issues that you may have. I would like to ask everyone to log in using their names and organizations, as it will be easier for us to follow up with you. This session will be run in English. As we had said it before or indicated in the registration, we will also record it and it will be uploaded on the IKI website. In today's session, it will be divided in three sections. In the first section, we will have or hear opening remarks from the Federal Ministry of Environment, Nature Conservation and Nuclear Safety, as the ministry through which IKI is funded. We will also hear an opening statement from the Zukunft Umweltgesellschaft, the current IKI management group. I would now like to welcome Philip Behrens, who heads the International Climate Initiative Unit at the Ministry, for his opening statement.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Dear ladies and gentlemen, dear friends of the International Climate Initiative, the IKI. I hope you are all doing well in these difficult times. And on behalf of the German Federal Ministry for the Environment, the BMU, and also on behalf of the IKI, I am delighted to welcome you to this online seminar. Our yearly thematic call has become one core element of the IKI. With this call, we want to react to current developments, to new trends, to the international negotiations, and we also want to develop our own innovative ideas and test out new approaches. The new 2020 thematic call was published on 11th of November. And the overarching title of this year's call is Creating Green Societies in Challenging Times. The call in total and also the respective funding priorities are, as you might have expected, reflecting the current situation with the coronavirus. With the call, we want to address the social and economic impacts of the pandemic. And we also want to demonstrate how climate change and biodiversity conservation projects can contribute to a sustainable economic restart. Finally, we also want to address the prevention of future pandemics. The aim of today's online seminar is to give you an insight view into the selection procedure of IKI outlines, and also talk about how to write a good outline from the perspective of the BMU and also from the perspective of the IKI Secretariat. We are all very much looking forward to the submission of interesting and innovative project outlines. Before I hand over to Michael Kraft, I would like to thank all of you for your committed and enthusiastic work as our current or hopefully future partners in implementation. Without you, the work of the IKI would by no means be possible. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you, Philip, and thank you, Sarah. Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends of the IKI, welcome and good afternoon from Berlin. My name is Michael Kracht. I'm Managing Director of ZUG. The ZUG is the BMU's program managing agency. We are providing technical as well as administrative support to the ministry in all stages of implementing funding programs. We act as the IKI Secretariat and organize, among other things, the IKI selection procedures, examining project and program applications on which the BMU finally decides. As facilitator of the IKI selection procedures, we are happy to host these two online seminars on the occasion of the recent launch of the IKI Thematic Call 2020. We had a seminar yesterday, and I think that was a very fruitful discussion and information, and we will have another one just to reach all of you all over the globe. From its beginning, the IKI has used a competition of ideas to select projects for climate and biodiversity protection. The IKI is proud of many good ideas which have been transformed into ambitious projects over the last decade by a rich diversity of actors. Good ideas, however, not only need ambition, but also structure, consistency, and strong partners. Therefore, with our online seminar, we hope to offer additional guidance on the selection procedure of the IKI thematic call, answer your questions, and to encourage a diverse set of actors from all around the globe to submit project ideas. The IKI online platform is open since 4th of December, and project outlines can be submitted until the 10th of March in 2021. Having said this, I wish you a fruitful online seminar with our presenters and panelists, and thank you for your participation. And back to Sarah.
Thank you very much to both of you. I would like to thank Philip for especially bringing up the issue on the pandemic and also showing your interest in receiving proposals addressing the challenges that have been brought up from the pandemic. I would also like to thank Michael for giving us or answering the question, who is ZUG or what is ZUG, and highlighting our role in managing the IKI Secretariat. I would now like to move on to the next section of this seminar, next slide, where BMU and IKI will go in an in-depth explanation on the selection procedure, highlighting on the review process, evaluation, project cycle, and even the management. But that is not all. They're going to try, from their perspective, to give you tips on what they consider to be good proposals. This session will be followed by a Q&A session, which are in term as the third section, whereby we will be able to answer your questions. Some of the questions we received from your registration, and others, as I had mentioned before, kindly send them to us using the Q&A button that you can find at the bottom of your screen. I would also like to once again highlight that if you see a question that you like, kindly rate it, as this will help us know which questions that you consider to be of more importance. I would then now like to introduce you to our presenters and also our panelists. Next slide, please. Today we have experts from IKI and from BMU. First of all, we have Berit von Kanatowski, who works also with the International Climate Initiative Unit from the Ministry of Environment. She is a senior officer and mainly in charge of funding information and coordination of the selection procedure. Today with you, we also have our biodiversity expert, Frank Barsh. Frank also works within BMU under the International Cooperation on Biodiversity Unit, and he is in charge of coordinating IKI projects under the funding area 4, which is biodiversity. We also have Ina. Ina is from the IKI Secretariat. She has a background in climate change and environmental governance and is currently coordinating the thematic selection procedure. We also have Manya with us, who heads Forest, Land Use and Biodiversity Unit within ZUG, and she is responsible for the funding procedure at Section 1 and 2, together with experienced technical project managers. Without much further ado, I would like to welcome Berit and Ina to give us their presentation. Kindly note once again, send us your content relation questions using the Q&A button, and do not forget to rate the questions that you think are of importance to you.
Thank you so much, Sarah. I'm really honored to be here, and I say hello to everybody. I would like actually to start with a short glimpse at the IKI for those who are not really familiar with us or with the IKI. Yeah, let me start. Well, the International Climate Initiative, also called IKI, was founded in 2008 and aims at enabling and promoting climate and biodiversity projects in developing, emerging, and transition countries. Since 2008, over 700 projects have been approved by IKI, involving a BMU funding volume of around 3.9 billion euro. At the same time, the annual financial expenditure of IKI has risen continuously from 120 million euro in 2008 to 567 million in 2020. Therefore, IKI is a significant component of German international climate finance and contributes to the fulfillment of Germany's obligations as a contracting party under the United Nations Framework on Convention on Climate Change and the Convention on Biological Diversity. As Michael already mentioned, BMU has commissioned the IKI Secretariat of ZOG to implement the funding program. On the right-hand side of the slide, you can see the 4 funding areas. IKI promotes the mitigation of greenhouse gas emissions, the adaptation of to the impacts of climate change, the conservation of natural carbon sinks with a focus on reducing emissions from deforestation and forest degradation, and the conservation of biodiversity. A prerequisite for receiving support from IKI is that the measures must be considered ODA eligible according to the definition of the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. According to this definition, ODA includes funds provided with the primary objective of promoting the economic and social development of the developing countries by government agencies, that's IKI, to developing countries, or in exceptional cases to nationals of developing countries or international organizations for the benefit of developing countries. So a measure must meet all 4 conditions to be considered ODA eligible. Next slide, please. IKI promotes climate and biodiversity projects in developing and emerging countries with different thematic and geographical priorities. BMU selects IKI projects using competitive procedures, so-called funding calls, which are regularly announced on the IKI website. And IKI has 2 different approaches. The bilateral approach, where calls are announced with IKI partner countries, and the thematic approach, where, as the name suggests, the topics are the focus of the calls. Within these 2 pillars, IKI primarily supports comprehensive large-scale projects, and these projects are implemented by consortia of at least 2 implementing organizations. The thematic pillar also includes, you can see it on the right, the small-scale programs aimed at small and medium-sized organizations. Here we have the IKI Small Grants Fund for applicants from the partner countries implemented by GIZ. And we have the IKI Medium Grants Fund implemented by ZUG and targeting NGOs and think tanks from Germany. At this point, just a brief hint that the second round of the IKI Small Grant started on the 1st of December. The submission deadline is 9th of February, and you can see it on the IKI website. The next round of the IKI Medium Grants is planned for February, March next year. And one final comment on the thematic calls. In the last thematic calls, approximately 240 outlines were submitted. However, the number of outlines varies a lot between the funding priorities. Sometimes only 7 outlines are submitted for a funding priority, and in some cases 30 outlines for the same funding priority. But at the end, we normally just choose 1 outline. In biodiversity topics, also sometimes 2. Next slide, please. Okay. As Philip and Michael already mentioned, the thematic call was published on 11th of November on the IKI website. Overall, 240 million euro of funding are available. The focus is on green recovery and how we can create green societies in these challenging times. The 13 new IKI funding priorities address pressing challenges in the areas of climate change mitigation and biodiversity conservation, including the unique issues caused by the pandemic. Next slide, please. On this slide, you see the 13 thematic funding priorities that are linked to the 4 funding areas of IKI. The funding priorities are also published on the IKI website, and if you're planning to submit an outline, I recommend that you read the funding priority very carefully. I'm not going into detail, but I would like to give a few hints about special features. First, number 2, developing skills and ideas, establishing an educational landscape on the issue of climate action is only open for bilateral projects. A regional outreach would be good, but is not mandatory. And we had a question about this yesterday. For this topic, we don't have a certain, we don't have special countries already in mind. So please just go along the explanations in the funding priority. Also, the number 10 and 11. There we accept smaller budgets from 5 to 20 million. That is like always. The biodiversity topics. And a very new feature is our funding priorities 12 and 13, which are solely open for outlines with fiduciary management arrangements. In the next slides, we will also go into detail of the specific requirements for these 2 new funding priorities. And as I said, please, for further information on the content and the geographical parameters, please see the information provided on the IKI website. At the end of this presentation, we'll summarize all necessary links to the documents. Next slide, please. The requirements of application and the procedure of selection for funding priorities 1 to 11 and funding priorities 12 and 13 differ. For FSP 1 to 11, the usual requirements for joint projects apply. Funding volume ranges between 5 and 20 million euro. Projects can be planned for duration up to 8 years. Regional projects are preferred. However, please see also the specific information provided in the funding information and in each funding priority description. For instance, as I said, funding priority number 2 only open for bilaterals, or the funding priority number 7 only in West and Central Africa. You find the specifications there. Yes, cooperation countries need to be ODA eligible. We recommend a maximum number of 5 cooperation countries to ensure that impact can be achieved in the individual countries. Here I would like to mention for funding priority 6, Eastern Partnership. To the Eastern Partnership, I mean, part of the Eastern Partnership are 6 countries, so it would make sense to actually include this, the 6 countries under this funding priority. Then projects need to be implemented in a consortia, meaning by at least 2 organizations. Yes, we don't have we were discussing if we should actually limit the number of organizations for a consortium as well, but we said no, because actually we think this should be up to you, how you organize the consortia. However, we mentioned in the funding information that you should keep in mind the bigger the consortium is, the more administration you will have. Okay. The exception for FSP 10 and 11 I've just mentioned. It's really important to know that if you apply for a project with less than 7 million euro, and consortia is not required, or is not absolutely necessary. And last but not least, we would like to see 50% of funding going to local actors. I think we talk about that later as well. Okay, now I come to funding priority 12 and 13. There, specific requirements apply. The funding volume is up to 30 million euro, which are fiduciary managed in the form of trust funds, equity holdings, quasi-equity loans, or financial contributions to capital funds. The project duration is also up to 8 years, and only regional or global projects are allowed. And in contrast to the other funding priorities, the region or group of countries can be defined during the second selection stage and not with submission of the project outline. And implementation by consortia is not mandatory, but still possible, which means that NGOs interested in these funding priorities can work together with develop the eligible organizations we stated in the funding informations. We actually have in mind multilateral organizations and development banks, but I'm coming to this point later. And the implementation through local actors is also not mandatory, but we welcome if it is ensured that funds are largely used by local organizations. Okay, next slide. For the FSP 1 to 11 and 12 and 13, different implementing organizations are eligible. The funding priorities 1 to 11 are open for, I almost said usual suspects, sorry. I mean, this is open for the candidates IKI normally addresses, which means that a great variety of organizations and institutions from Germany, Europe, Asia, Africa, and America can submit outlines. We are addressing non-governmental organizations, business enterprises, universities and research institutions, implementing organizations of the Federal Republic of Germany, institutions in partner countries, multilateral organizations and institutions such as development banks, organizations and programs of the United Nations. And as far as I can see, only private persons and governmental institutions in the partner countries are excluded. Business enterprises are sometimes also a little bit tricky because of the European state aid law, but nevertheless, you can, I mean, private enterprises can submit outlines. The funding priorities 12 and 13 are open for international, intergovernmental organizations, multilateral development banks, and the German Development Loan Corporation, KfW. And what is really important is that it is required that the organizations need to already have an existing relationship with German government agencies. Otherwise, the negotiations for a grant agreement can take years. At least that is our experience. I hope that already could answer some of your questions, and I now hand over to Ina. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Berit. Hello also from my side. It's lovely to see so many people joining us today. And yeah, I'm very looking forward to giving you some insights, especially into the selection process, into the selection criteria. And I also will talk a little bit about how to be successful with your idea. Next slide, please. So, as you might already know, the application process consists of 2 stages. The first stage, it starts with your ideas, the so-called project outlines. And as Berit already said, please submit them online until the 10th of March, Central European time. And then we're going to select the promising ideas and outlines for phase 2. And in phase 2, you elaborate your idea further and submit a detailed project proposal. And then the final decision is made in the end. Please, next slide. So how do we select the promising outlines for phase 2? In phase 1, we do an in-depth assessment, and it consists of 3 steps. So first, we could do an initial checkup of the exclusion criteria. And secondly, we do a technical screening. And third, there's also an assessment by external experts. And this whole assessment process leads to a final scoring. And this scoring is per funding priority. And then BMU decides based on this final ranking per funding priority. So if you win and you're going to receive an invitation to develop a detailed project proposal. And if not, you get a letter of decline. And as Berit already said, don't be disappointed. Sometimes it's very close between 1 or 2 very, very good ideas. And as Berit already said, we only can fund 1 outline per funding priority. And last year it was also, we got almost 200 outlines and could only choose 14 for the phase 2. And if you ask yourself how long time this phase takes, it can take up to 6 to 7 months. And for funding priority 12 and 13, we plan to be a little bit faster, but it also depends how many ideas we will receive. Next slide, please. So as you might already know, we have exclusion and assessment criteria. In total, we have 14 exclusion criteria. And if you miss out on one, your outline is going to be excluded. I also won't go into detail here. You find the list in the funding information. And for example, last year we had a very good idea, but they wanted to implement the idea in 10 years. It was a very large project. So we had to exclude the idea because the maximum duration is 8 years. Or for example, we had also another very good idea, but the lead implementing organization was not fulfilling the turnover criteria. So please read carefully about these criteria in the funding information. For example, for the turnover criteria in page 5, you find the definition. So it's important that the average annual BMU project funding may not exceed the average annual turnover of the lead implementation organization. And this is measured over the last 3 verifiable financial years. So let me give you an example. For example, you're planning to apply as a lead organization, and your turnover over the last 3 financial years was 4 million euros. And you want to apply for funding for 12 million euros, let's say. So in general, that's possible, but it also depends how long you plan to run your project. So if you want to have it implemented fast, let's say within 3 years, that won't be possible, because then the annual BMU funding will exceed your turnover. But for example, if you plan to implement your project a little bit longer, within 5 up to 8 years, that's possible, because then the annual BMU funding will not exceed your turnover. Next slide, please. The assessment criteria so far, you have probably seen them already as well. There are 24 assessment criteria. And the overall scoring of phase 1 is made on these 24 criteria. And they have a different weighting, but what is key is the overarching impression. And I will also talk a little bit in the next section about how you are going to be successful with your idea, so that becomes a little bit clearer then. And what is also important and interesting to note is that some of these criteria may also lead to a later exclusion if you as a lead organization does not comply with. It's, for example, the IKI safeguards. Next slide, please. So I also don't want to go into detail here. Find the list also in the funding information. Let me take an example of the assessment criteria. What is the crucial one is, for example, the transformative potential. So what is transformative for us is if the project fulfills one or even more of the following aspects. It's about ambition, change, and model potential. What does this mean? If you plan your project, ambition is key, which means that your project achieves quantifiable improvement. So it improves the status quo and is beyond the business as usual approach. Second, it's also about change. So it has a systemic shift, and ideally that you create a positive path dependency, which is difficult to reverse. And third, that it has a model potential, so it can be scalable. It's also replicable. It's already replicable in other countries and sectors. Next slide, please. And this, and then let's talk a little bit about the second stage. What happens if your outline gets, if you get an invitation for the second stage? There we will guide you through. We will provide you with all necessary templates. We will provide you with all guidance and support, technical, budgetary, and legal support. And this stage starts with a kickoff meeting with all parties involved. And the results are also documented in a protocol. And this protocol is binding for this phase 2 and also needs to be addressed in the final full proposal. And there are 2 options to get to the final proposal. So it's you can do it with or without a preparation phase. So the preparation phase can be used for desk studies, workshops with partners, the country visit, etc. It is so far not mandatory, but if you choose to do one, we recommend it to plan it also in advance to make sure that that it is aligned with all partners involved. And from our side, we will also accompany parts of this preparation phase, but more as a watchdog. So we will not write the proposal for you, And so if you decide to do a preparation phase, then it's there's a deadline. So 5 weeks after you get the protocol from the kickoff meeting, you have to apply for the preparation phase. And so in the end of this phase 2, you submit your project proposal along with the political backstopping from all the countries involved in form of a letter of understanding, letter of interest, and a memorandum of understanding. And also, if you choose to do a preparation phase, you also hand in the report from the preparation phase. So let's talk a little bit about the time frame. So this whole process can take up to 2 years, as of phase 1 and 2 combined. So we talk about a realistic project start for the funding priority 1 to 11 from early or mid-end 2022. Sorry, that was confusing. Mid or end 2022, the earliest, let's say, yeah, this way. Okay, the second stage for the funding priority 12 and 13, it is a little bit different. So we try to be also a little bit, to be a little bit faster and deposit the money in the fund next year already, so in 2021. And what Berit already mentioned, it is, the second stage is going to be a consultation process to reach a fund agreement with all parties involved. On this consultation process includes also to fix the administrative details and agree upon the technical details and probably shape a little bit the project concept, etc. Good. Next slide, please. So now we're going to talk a little bit about how to be successful with your idea. So first of all, about, next slide, please, about the outline forms. If you log in, you have already seen for sure that it's 2 different templates. And the one template for the funding priority 1 to 11, and another one for funding priority 12 and 13. If you plan to put them in your form or establish a new form. And what we also have, as last year as well, a Word template. So this template, you can use them for the template for preparation, but please make sure that we only accept the applications electronically. So via the online platform. And also as last year, we have a concept note. We have a template uploaded for the concept note. It includes also this impact logic. I will talk a little bit about it later on. So please make sure to fill in those templates and also upload it as a PDF. So to wrap it up, I mean, the online mask should be self-explanatory. And so again, the funding priority, the template for 1 to 11, it's very similar to the last year. It has a concept note up to 5 pages. There is a little bit more checkboxes to confirm with our compliances, but in general, it's the same. And for funding priority 12 and 13, it is a little bit different since it's new this year. Here, it's, as Berit already mentioned in the beginning, it's important that you type in your contractual basis, the agreements you have with the Federal Republic of Germany, ideally with the BMU, so you can function as a, you can administer the money through fiduciary management, and you have to elaborate a little bit more on private sector mobilization. Also, there are special fields to type in to quantify it, please quantify it, and the concept note is a little bit longer and you reflect a little bit more also on the private sector involvement. Good, let's move on. So now we talk about how to be successful with the idea. Since we identified some common mistakes that happen and prevent outlines to pass on to the second stage, we came up with some key elements, key points for successful outlines. So in general, yeah, this is straightforward. Please use clear language, avoid buzzwording, and harmonize the language of the different people contributing to the idea, and also have a simple sound and feasible idea. It has to be manageable. Then secondly, the framework conditions. The framework conditions are key. So as you already know, that we only fund projects with also the political backstopping of the partner countries. So as we already said in the beginning, the political parties are never part of the consortium, or they cannot apply, but their backstopping is important. So please make sure that you choose the political partners in a reasonable manner. We often work with the partner, often with the environmental ministries, but it can also vary. It also depends on the topic, and yeah, so it's also up to you to choose a good to make a good choice. Then, secondly, of course, your idea must be linked to the international agenda for sure, but it also has to nicely fit to the strategies of the partner countries, the region, etc. And third, as Berit also already said, some countries are already predefined in the funding priorities. So please read carefully the funding priorities. But if there is no specification on the countries, please choose them wisely. And please choose them wisely. As she already said, we limited the number to 5 countries. There is a few exceptions, but 5 countries to have also visible impact in the countries. So now I think it's the 4th point. Please consider the donor landscape. So please highlight possible cooperations and synergies. It doesn't have to be IKI projects, but yeah, please highlight these cooperations or possibility to cooperate, and please avoid duplications. Next slide, please. So let's talk a little bit about the local involvement. This is a very crucial part as well. I think for years, and in the last years, we also came up with a more specific definition. It is really key to have local actors on board and have a local ownership. We have to find it in the funding information. This is the 50%, so-called 50% rule. And for funding priority 1 to 11, if it's possible, please make sure that 50% of the funding is implemented through local actors in the cooperation countries. And you find also, we get a lot of questions about, does this organization count as a local partner? Please read carefully at page 8 the funding information. We have defined it as so local actors can be implementing organizations, but also subcontractors. So please have a look there. And for funding priority 12 and 13, as Berit already said, there's a great deal of interest that funds are largely used also by local actors. Good. And then what my colleagues, me also, we're talking with some colleagues, and they also said, have read a lot of outlines, and they told me, yeah, it's very important that you are clear about this target of the 50% target, and how you also will cooperate with the local partners. So please state this in the work package, the activities. Also, we look at the respective budgets to prove it. Mm-hmm. Okay, and then the 4th big point is the consortium. As Berit already said, it's not mandatory for all funding priorities, but if you choose to apply as a consortium, then please make sure that all the competences of the consortium partners nicely complement each other. This means, like, here again, we also look at the distribution of work packages, and also how do you distribute the budget. So That's a crucial point. And I mean, for funding priority 12 and 13, it's up to you if you apply as a consortium. As Berit said, for 10 and 11, it's also depends on how much money you want to apply for. And then for 1 and 9, it's mandatory. Next and the last slide, please. So now talk a little bit about the project, the key issue, the project vision. Yeah, as I already said, it's the transformative character. But first of all, of course, it has to be ambitious, but also achievable, feasible, quantifiable. And secondly, it's also about innovation. If you offer a partly or a new solution, that would be great. What is also a very good ingredient, if you have it in the project vision, is of course this 3 points of this transformative character, as an ambition, change, or model character. You can also read in the funding information a little bit more about it, page 6 and 7. And what is also very important as a 4th point here is that you have a very good match with the funding priority. So yeah, so remember our scoring is always per funding priority, so you have to make sure that you so nicely fit with the funding priority. And the last point is that's also important. So what we also like a lot, or what holistic approaches are very welcome. So, for example, if you plan an adaptation project, it would be good to keep in mind also the effects on mitigation, biodiversity. So, and the last, the sixth ingredient, is the impact logic. So. Here it's very important, please be very specific and also realistic, let's say that be as specific and as realistic as possible. Then, for example, describing the context, the objectives and activities. As you already know, and as we already talked about, plan your idea in accordance with the principles of the result-based project planning, this impact logic set up by the OECD. So the template is also available online, like in our online. Sorry, the technical problem here. So now I'm back. Yeah, the impact logic. So please use the template. We set up a template for using the impact logic. So it's just about filling in this template. It is part of the concept note, so you find it also if you log in the online platform. And yeah, so please structure the work packages and the activities in a logical manner. That's important. Also be concrete in the activities and how you reach your objectives. So it's in a nutshell, it's important that you answer 3 basic questions. What do you want to do? How do you want to do it? And why do you want to do it? So that's from my side, and back to Sarah.
Thank you very much, Ina. Thank you very much, Berit, for the presentation, for the detailed presentation. I would just like to inform everyone that all the information that they have shared today is available on the IKI website. I cannot stress on this point more. Please.
Sorry, Sarah?
Yes?
I do have a few slides I would like to show.
Okay.
Maybe? Sorry.
Yes. Sorry about this. We hadn't gone through the IKI project cycle. And
sorry, that was my mistake. Yeah.
And I think that this it might be a good idea to go through it because we are already receiving questions about the project cycle and how long it takes. So yes, exactly. Berit, please go ahead.
Thanks, Sarah. Thanks, Ina. Yes, I would like to lose a few words about the IKI project cycle and the obligations of the implementing organizations when you're working together with us. After the approval of the project at the end of the second selection stage, the project officially begins. During the project duration, the consortia is asked each year to hand in half-yearly updates in March and September. The half-yearly updates have the aim to inform the IKI Secretariat and the BMU about relevant political developments in the project environment and significant events in the project implementation. The information provided is also used to update the project information on the IKI website. Also, each year at the end of April, it is mandatory for projects to submit an interim report for the previous year, January, December, the previous year. It is the main monitoring tool. The report consists of a status report and a financial statement. In the status report, the consortia reports on the progress of its activities and the achievements of results. Additional aspects include the framework conditions, safeguards, and lessons learned. I'm sorry. At the end of the project, no later than 6 months after the end of the project, a final project report and a proof of use of the funding, has to be submitted. And all the reporting templates can be found on the IKI website. Please note that there are different formats of templates for different types of organizations and depending on the beginning of the project. Sorry for that, but well, we can't really help it. And it's, we are working on that. The midterm evaluation and final review will be managed by the monitoring unit at ZUG. Some more information regarding the evaluation is provided on the next slide. For projects that fall under the funding priorities 12 and 13, there may be deviations from the IKI usual evaluation routine. This depends on the agreements with the federal government of Germany. Next slide, please. Well, evaluation. And now I hope to answer some questions, especially of Victoria from WWF. In order to enhance learning and the project management, all IKI joint projects will be subject to a midterm evaluation. The timeline for that will be adjusted and aligned with the project logic and timetable together with the consortium. As the midterm evaluation will be commissioned by ZUG with a separate budget for evaluation, the consortium should not allocate budget for evaluation activities. Thanks. Next slide. Also, for selected projects, an accompanying impact evaluation is planned, not for all, but to some, to gain deeper impact level insights and recognize scaling potential at an early stage. The evaluation is managed by the monitoring unit of the ZUG. The conception of the evaluation approach should already start during the preparation phase of the selected project. So it could be that if you take part in a kickoff meeting, that the evaluation unit of ZUG will be there as well. So please be aware of that. And by I telling you that is because I would like to, stress the point that this evaluation is the kind of state of the art in international funding procedures. And I would like you to know that we are planning to publish those reports, like those evaluation reports. And with that, I'm at the end of my presentation and I can hand over back to Sarah. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Berit. Could we go to the next slide? Thanks very much, and sorry about that. I did not see that you hadn't finished your slides. And thanks again for answering the questions that we seem to be receiving. Thank you again. And I would like to again let you know that in case you have questions in relation to content, and this is content with regards to the procedure, kindly send it through the Q&A. If you have any other questions that you'd like clarification on the priority areas that have been chosen, kindly write to us on the IKI Secretariat and we will be able to get back to you on these questions. I would now like to welcome our other panelists. Next slide, please. That is Frank, Bash, and Manya. May I kindly let you know that we have received quite a number of questions, and we received some already when you were registering, and we will try to address all the questions that you have sent to us today. Kindly bear with us if you're not able to reach or to address your questions. However, we will get back to you via email. To start us off now, I have questions for our new panelists who've just joined us now. And so I would like to start with Frank Bash. Frank Bash, so many people are asking about examples of projects, IKI projects. Do you have, or could you give us an example or some examples of the IKI projects, taking in mind that we have the small grants, thematic hall, and also the medium grants?
Yes, thank you, Sarah. This is indeed an important question because it's a good orientation for future projects or new concept to be developed for IKI. And we have the best source for such projects to get information about on our IKI website. If you go to projects, you will find an interactive map where you can zoom in and you will find links and information about the projects in the countries and regions. And furthermore, you also have a search function where you can look for specific programs or and preferred thematic themes you are looking for. So this is the best source, and I would like to invite you to have a deeper look and to inform you about what is already running in IKI. But I have to admit that, of course, these are only projects from the thematic calls, as the medium and small grants funding opportunities are still quite new and not in the database yet, these projects. So yeah, please go and have a look. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Frank, for the clarification. My next question, I would like to address it to Manya. Manya, hypothetically speaking, that I have applied for funding and my application has been accepted. What is the time span between submission of application and the start of a project?
Yes, thank you very much, Sarah. I'm very glad to be here today with you all. Good morning or good afternoon. And yes, the time span is a very important issue here, of course, and considering it, thank you, Mark, for the slide, and considering it from the very beginning is of course very, very relevant. Well, we are talking here, as Ina mentioned earlier, about 6 to 7 months for the first stage. You submit your outline, and then after about 6 months approximately, you get a response. Your proposal will be, your outline is selected or unfortunately rejected. And then starts, if you are selected, if your outline is selected, then you get the invitation to send us a project proposal. But first we will then organize a kickoff meeting with you where you give us a presentation on your project idea. And the second stage goes on through the preparation phase. That is, as was mentioned earlier by Ina, consists of country missions, or during times of coronavirus, of video conferences with partner country institutions and with the entire consortium, together with ZUG officers and BMU officers, of course. And in the end, the expected result is the full proposal. So the second stage takes around 1.5 years. So the entire process is 2 years. And this might seem very long to you. It seems also long to us. So we are currently working on shortening that time span until your project can start. But to explain a bit why it is so important for us to have this second stage as well, and to work on a very consistent proposal that is the acceptance in the partner country, in the cooperation country, is much higher, of course, after really working together with them on the full proposal idea. And also, we think it is very important to build a good consortium and to be clear about your ideas and define them very well. So our experience is that in the end, we have very good projects, very good project proposals, and very well-defined projects here. Thank you.
Yes. Getting back to what you mentioned and what also Ina presented before, the preparation phase. For which time period can the preparation phase be requested? And what kind of costs can be requested for the preparation phase?
Yes, thank you, Sarah, for this question. We expect a maximum duration of 6 months of the preparation phase, as you can see here on the slide that Ina presented earlier. And there might be exceptions, especially during coronavirus times, the time span was a bit longer, but we go for 6 months, and then you should hand in the full project proposal as the goal and the main goal of this phase. And you can request all project expenses, like such as personal costs or travel expenses here. But please note that the total cost of the preparation phase is included in the total costs of the overall project then, and may not exceed the maximum amount stated in the funding information.
I would now like to move on to a question for Ina. We've been mentioning your name, so it's logical that I would pick you for the next question. And my question would be on how interactive is the process of developing a concept? Is it, it would be helpful to get feedback from IKI to amend proposals? Is that a possibility?
Sorry for the delay. I had some technical problems. I think I got the question right about the interactive, how interactive is the process?
Yes.
Thank you. So far, as I mentioned earlier, in the first stage, we don't give feedback, or we don't have a consultancy process set up. That's why we're doing this webinar. In the second phase, we give a little bit more guidance. And then what we also offer is a feedback round if your outline gets rejected.
Thank you so much. And how much is the total budget available, or how many projects are you planning to select? Is there a particular number that you plan to select?
That's also a good question. I'm looking to Berit. I think she already mentioned the number 240 million euros this year. And we plan also to select like one project per funding priority. And as Berit already said, there might be an exception for the biodiversity funding priorities. But this also depends a little bit on the overarching budget.
And how many projects can an organization submit?
Yeah, this is also a very good question. How many outlines you can submit? You can submit as many as you want, so there is no limitation.
So in that case, you can submit as many under different funding priorities as well?
Yes.
All right, thank you. That is very clear for us. My next question, I would like to bring it to Berit, because you have mentioned about the corona pandemic, as well as Philip in his statement mentioned and highlighted on the corona pandemic, which brings quite a number of challenges. My question would be, if it is a positive, if the proposal includes also actions that will work on the effects of the corona pandemic. Should organizations plan, or should organizations have in their proposals the thought about the corona pandemic and its effect, and how this can be curbed from their projects?
Yes, thanks. Of course, this is what the call is about. This I can definitely answer with yes. we had this question yesterday, and there was like someone asking if you should go, like if the organization should go to back to business as usual, and that is at no means an option. You know, like business as usual is not what we are looking for. So we would like you to address the pandemic, and this is all about the greening the recovery. I mean, this thematic call started just now, and we just talked about the timetable. So I suppose that when you start the project, this is maybe not. It doesn't have the importance which is which the pandemic has right now. But still, we are. I think we are facing a process which will take years to recover. And our aim is to green this way. And what I would also like to say, Corona is horrible. I mean, there are people dying, but still, it showed me and it showed my colleagues what is possible if when you're like working as we do and as you do, and like working on this international level. So I would like to ask you to keep this in mind, what digital, like the social media and all these instruments we have at hand can do for us. And because we as IKI, we support climate neutrality also in the preparation and the implementation of projects. We would like to see that you address this topic as well in your outlines. I hope that answers the question. And I would like to add about the Sarah, if I may. I would like to add to the question of this interactive process. In this stage, like when the funding information is published and we are waiting for your outlines, this is a competition. So I find it really hard. I mean, I can understand the need to talk and to, have some feedback on your ideas. But because it is in competition, it would be just not fair to just talk to one organization and not to the other. So the way out was to actually organize this seminar, and I just ask for your understanding that that it won't be possible, as much as a fan of interactive processes I am. But this is not possible within the competition. Thanks.
Thanks for the clarification, Berit. Going back to organizations, since you brought it up, and looking at the consortium, do organizations who have never led on an IKI proposal qualify to lead a consortium?
Sorry, Zara. Can you ask again? I was...
No problem. It's now late in Germany, and we understand it's been a long day for all of us. Yeah. With regards to the consortium and leading, I would like to find out if organizations who have never led on an IKI proposal qualify to lead a consortium.
Of course. I mean, there's no requirement that you already had to lead. I mean, somehow you have to start. I mean, the requirements are stated in the funding information. You just need to have, like the administrative capacity to handle this amount of money. And you need to have the administrative capacity also to handle a consortium. So that would be the limiting factors. And I don't see why a new organization can't lead a consortium, but it's challenging. And what I also would like to say, I just read the questions at for the panel. You don't need to have a German organization within your consortium. I mean, I can imagine that it might be easy at some times to have a German organization on board, but it's not prerequisite. So feel free to choose who you want and who is suitable for the project.
I think you've
Thanks.
answered part of my next question that I wanted to
Sorry.
ask, but I have to ask again so that we clarify on it. You know, as a new organization or a lead, do you have a ceiling to how much funding you can give to the fast timers? I would say to the new organizations requesting for funding. Is there a ceiling on how much you can give?
No, it's not.
There's no ceiling. Thank you so much, Spirit. I would like to come back to, we mentioned shortly about the pandemic, and so I would like to move my next question to Frank. And this is with regards to the pandemic or to zoonotic diseases that people have been talking about at the moment. And the question is, if IKI has a preference on including zoonotic diseases, related issues on theme 11, and wildlife zoonotic diseases related issues in theme 10.
Yes, thank you, Sarah. In short words, no, we don't have any preferences for these priorities, funding priorities. But if you look at theme 11, it is addressing sustainable land use. And of course, in this area, livestock zoonotic diseases may be of more relevance than wildlife zoonotic diseases. And the other way around with theme 10, where we have a strong focus on natural barriers in the context of protected areas. So yeah, it makes sense that to address wildlife zoonotic diseases more than livestock zoonotic diseases. But this must not be the case, because also livestock can be a vector between ecosystems and people and communities. So it is not exclusively, if you get me right. So you have to decide what zoonotic diseases or how you address the different types of zoonotic diseases in these two funding priorities. So it is not a clear answer, but I think if you study the funding priorities, you may find some more information that guides you a bit better on deciding the strategies to address the different forms. And of course, zoonotic diseases, it is a wide range, and it can, in many cases, it can't be clearly differentiated between livestock and wildlife diseases too. So that this is the nature, and it is very resistant to be put into boxes like we used to do. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Frank. We now have other questions with regards to definition of some of the IKI terms that we use. And this question now goes to Manya. And I would start, first of all, by asking you, what is exactly the definition of local actors?
Thank you, Sarah. Yes, this is something to really be defined well, and you will find some explanation on it also in our IKI thematic selection procedure document on the website. But I still would like to say a few words about it. Local actors, or as we call them as well, national actors, are organizations or well, any kind of actors that are eligible here in the partner country or in the cooperation country. And then you may distinguish a local actor who is part of the consortium and has the opportunity to take part in decisions on where the funding goes, and should also, of course, receive a considerable part of the IKI funding there, or can take and has much more decision power than a local actor who is a subcontractor, for instance. So it may as well be non-governmental organizations or commercial enterprises, universities, etc. So any institution in the partner country, yeah, that is relevant also to the topics of the project. So as we prefer in funding line 1 to 11, that more than 50% of funding is channeled via local actors or national actors. This is also very relevant for your proposals. And of course, it is important that there should be a linkage to political agendas and strategies of the partner countries. So this is something that some of the national actors may bring into the consortium as an asset. Thank you.
I would just like to pick on it a bit more, Manya, if you may, you know, because on one hand, you're talking about the local partners, but then there's also the statement that is quite often within the IKI about relevant networks and platforms, you know. Mm-hmm. Could you just explain more on these two as well?
Of course, I can. Well, relevant networks and platforms include, for instance, organizations that are bilaterally or in different countries working on the same topics and linked. They're like sub-regional organizations formed by local actors, for instance, or could be also in one country. I think we are very open there, but as we prefer our projects to have an exit strategy and to continue producing impacts related to climate change and biodiversity, we think it's very important to think early on how to relate to as many partners as possible in the country or in the region. And as yesterday there was the question about what do we mean by region, I can state here that we refer to a region as a continent like Africa, Latin America, or Asia, but also as a it could be also West Africa, for instance. It doesn't have to be the whole continent. Thank you.
Manya, just allow me first to pick your brains a bit, you know, and because we are now on discussion about local partners, regional partners, and I think on that level, I would also ask if for an organization, does it need to have completed a BMU specific partnership assessment to be successful in the process?
Well, thank you, Sarah. Yes, I understand the question. No, not really. We don't have a specific procedure. There is no assessment procedure other than the requirements that are communicated via our call, via documents, via our website. But you may and that is, you may bear in mind that the organization has to have the technical competence, has to have the administrative capacity and the management skills necessary. And I would like to mention here as well the turnover criteria. You heard about it in the presentation. It's on page 5 of our IKI thematic selection procedure. So it's very important for us that the average annual BMU project funding volume does not exceed the annual turnover of the lead implementing organization measured over the last 3 verifiable financial years. So that is a criteria that we apply there, but you can all find it in the call documents. There's no secret. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Manya. Berit, get ready. I'll be coming to you after I finish off with an INA. I seem to be getting quite a number of questions with relation to funding priority 12 and 13 to INA. And there is a request. If you can actually explain how funding 13 and 12 or 12 and 13, I tend to always say 13 before 12, are different from the others.
Yeah, very good question. Yeah, they're very different. First of all, they're different. Yeah, can you go to the eligibility criteria again? Yeah, so there we go. So, you know, who can apply? This is fundamentally different. So you can only apply to funding priority 12 to 13 if you have can administer the money through disciplinary management. So the overarching aim in 12 and 13 is to put money in a fund or set up a new fund. So that's vielleicht and secondly, also the eligibility criteria different, and then secondly, how you apply is also differently. So all the whole selection process as well. So you have different forms, and then secondly, we also have for both. It's a two-stage process, but for funding priority 12 and 13, it's a little bit different. It's more a negotiation process, and it's going to be a little bit faster. So this is in a nutshell. And then for funding priority 12 and 13, what Berit already stressed out is that you need to have already agreement. So there are some regional banks fulfilling the criteria, few national banks, but you have to have the agreement with the two. Otherwise, it takes a very long time. It's possible, but ideally you have already a cooperation agreement.
Okay. Thank you very much. And here we got a question as somebody is asking also just in relation to 13 and 12 and 13, if the turnover criteria relate to MDBs.
This is a very good question. It is not so clear in the funding information. I would say yes, but I will double check and put the question also in our FAQ document online.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Ina. But allow me to just go further, because at the beginning, I'd asked you a question with regards to the organizations taking part and if they can submit several outlines under different funding priorities, and your answer was yes. Now, getting back onto that question comes another question. Can one organization participate in the same or several different consortia for the same funding priority?
Yes. The answer is yes again. Yeah, one organization can also participate in several consortia for one funding priority. Yes.
All right. Thanks. Short answers are always nice. I would like to now come back to Berit. I had mentioned to you, or I had warned you before, that I will get back to you soon. So now I'm back to you. And my question is, to what extent is it important to get formal support from the relevant ministries in the countries? And does this have an impact on the projects being selected?
Thanks for the question. Yeah, also a good question. I mean, we are a state fund. Yeah, I mean, this is like public money we distribute, and if we are working abroad, like in the international spheres, we need to have the support of the partner countries where we work with, well, where you work and where we are financing the activities. You don't need, like, in the first stage, I must say I'm a little bit hesitant to you know, say we need a written support letter from the government already, because this might, how should I say? Well, they expect then that really something is going to happen and that this outline will be chosen, and we can't guarantee that. So in the first stage, in the competition process, it is not necessary, and I actually would say you shouldn't go that far. But when you're selected, then the whole process, you know, starts, because the funding information is just the funding information of BMU. We never talk to partner governments about this funding information and the topics we choose. So it's then up to you actually to get this input and this ownership of the countries that they support the project. I mean, they don't have to. It's not necessary that they are active, that they have an active part in the project, But we need, in general, we need the support letter from the partner countries. I don't know if I made it clear. I mean, we need support, that's for sure. Support letters from the partner countries. And normally in the thematic call, we have this preparation phase where you get into contact with the political partners. And this is a good point to, you know, for a memorandum of understanding or a written letter where they say, yes, we would like to support this project. In the first stage, we need an indication that the partners might be interested. That would be good. I would say if the project idea is embedded in political, like national strategies, that should be the case. And it, you know, it might help if you have a contact person at the government, but we don't need letters at this stage. That we would need later. And with that, for that, we would also like, you know, help you, because we are also writing letters to the governments, informing them that the preparation phase starts, that you're going on a country mission, and that you would like to conduct workshops, etc. And then it's up to you to talk to them. And normally that was the case at the last thematic calls. The ZUG colleagues are taking part in the country missions. So you kind of have our support as well. I hope that helps. Thanks.
I think Manya has something to add on to it. Yes, Manya, go ahead.
Thank you, Sarah, and thank you, Berit. I just wanted to add a point. This is quite new that UG is accompanying the consortium on these country missions, and but we had quite a few country missions in preparation phases of IKI projects before, unfortunately, the pandemic hit us. And we have very good experiences with that. So when discussing the project proposal with the like with the government institution, the ministry, the Ministry of Environment, for instance, in the country, then it is very helpful to be there as well. So and to see also, of course, the comments and the questions and maybe also worries of partner institutions, and you can really take care of them as well. And sometimes the ministry, BMU, is going on these missions with you then, or sometimes it's ZUG only, or BMU and ZUG, and we try to do our best to smooth the discussions with the ministries in the partner countries if necessary. But of course, we rely very much on your networks there as well, and then it will be easy to have a memorandum of understanding or a letter of interest and bring it to IKI to start with the project afterwards. Thank you.
Now that you're on, please stay on, Manya, because the next question I would like to bring it back to you again, you know, and we have a question that there are some organizations that have nationally registered offices. If they involve their nationally registered offices as part of the implementation, are they considered as local partners?
Thank you, Sarah. It's a very good question. Of course, we look forward to see that there are you have your nationally registered offices, and then it is important to that well, anyone who wants to be considered as a local partner has to held an official legal status under the respective national law of the cooperation country, has to pay taxes there, just to mention it, and well, yes, they can be considered as local actors. I would say it depends a little bit. The dependence of the regional office on what goes on in the headquarters of the organization. But yes, of course, it can be considered. Thank you.
Thank you, Manya. I would now like to go back to our biodiversity expert, Frank Barsh. And Frank, I have a question for you here with regards to thematic call 11, the priority focus guidelines mention. I will read it out to you. Creating scenarios that make maximum use of existing databases and pilot projects that have already been tested. And the question is whether you can explain what IKI understands with the term scenarios.
Yes, thank you, Sarah, for this question. I try to answer it in the best manner. It is a bit bit technical, so it might be a bit complex. So with these scenarios, we mean models that take into account factors, both direct or indirect, that influence forms of land use and their future developments, as well as their regional impact. So this is a kind of modeling, and the proponents should take into account all factors that are relevant for the project success and the transition in this section. I hope this is well understood. Maybe as it is a very specific question, we can always answer such very specific questions later on in writing too, of course.
Yes, thanks. Thanks for providing the answer. And I would like to come to you with a different question altogether, because you answered on examples of projects. Yeah, and here we have somebody who's asking if you can provide an example of bilateral projects with regional impact. I'm not so sure if you can do it, but could you think of one?
Yeah, it's not too difficult. I can't give you really a concrete project example. I will give you an example in theory. For example, if IKI implements a bilateral project in one country, which has an important ecosystem or protected areas, transnational protected area complex, for example, which is a very classical example, and it's only implemented in this country, it is highly we can generate a lot of lessons learned for the neighboring countries. So it has an impact, and it is not only a model for other countries, it's also triggering interest sometimes by neighboring countries in protecting these areas, or to approach the similar approach. I hope this makes sense. Or to give you a completely different example, if a project is implemented in one country, let's say for an ecosystem that is completely unique, and the approach is extremely unique only to this ecosystem or species or resources, and cannot be a model for others and neighboring countries, then there is little to no impact on the region. I hope this is clear. But very often we have regional impacts, of course, because the country borders are not ecological borders, they are political borders, of course.
Thank you very much, Frank. I have yet another question for you, a very short question. How important is One Health approach for IKI?
It is extremely important because, or let me just refer a little bit back to the past. The One Health approach is not a new concept. We are talking about One Health for a long time already, but the biodiversity component or the rule or the impact of biodiversity on One Health was largely overlooked or ignored. So One Health was mainly discussed between veterinarians and food chain traders and whatsoever. But the impact of biodiversity wasn't seen. And with the COVID-19 pandemic, it became very obvious that there's a very strong link between zoonotic diseases and human well-being and human health. So it is now in the discussion, the global discussions, the role of biodiversity, and we have an open door into the One Health approach. So, and of course we want to use and we want to contribute also with IKI in this area, on the implementation on a comprehensive One Health approach. So that's why you see in this thematic call quite often, as in particular with regards to biodiversity, pandemic issues highlighted, of course.
Thank you very much, Frank. I would like to now, before I get back to Berit, because I have 2 or 3 questions for Berit now, I would like her to just take a breather, and I start with Ina now, because Ina, we are getting back again to priority 12 and 13, where people would like to know more about the multilateral development banks. Here I have 2 questions. The first one is whether the multilateral development banks refer only to World Bank, AFDB, ADB, or also Development Bank of Latin America, Development Bank of South Africa, or East Africa Development Bank. Could you just give us a feedback?
This is a tricky one. I cannot answer with yes or no. Well, yes. Not only the multilateral banks, also the regional banks and bilateral banks as well. That's the answer. So yes, but then maybe that's a but it depends. Again, there's like, if there's no agreements, if there are no agreements with Germany, you can apply, and but it will take more time then. So ideally the bank has already agreement with Germany, or ideally also the BMU.
Just hold on, because I still, I can see Berit would like to comment on it, or it's a totally different. Okay, I give you the chance to comment.
Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, I just wanted to add, this is like the first time we are addressing this fiduciary management structures within the funding information. We are trying, we are learning and we are trying, and this is probably not the perfect, funding priority explanation for 12 and 13. But we are like, this is one direction we would like to go in the future as well. So yes, as Ina said, regional development banks can apply. What they need to have is an existing cooperation with German government institutions. And I'm not sure if these development banks are having an existing cooperation. And national development banks, I don't really see that they can apply. But I think, we should check that. And I think we put an answer at the FAQ document.
Yes, thanks. Ina and Berit are going to look at it, and they will put it on the FAQ document. May I kindly remind you that we have quite a lot of information on the IKI website, and kindly refer to this FAQ document time and again as we update it always. I would now like to call on Berit. Please don't switch off your camera so quickly, because the next question comes to you actually. And I would like to ask if partner countries under thematic calls include countries for which bilateral calls also exist, or do you prefer if the partner country is not covered under the bilateral calls?
We covered quite some countries with our bilateral calls, and I don't see that we can exclude them for the thematic calls. So the answer is simply yes, of course. If there are if there were country calls, you still can address these countries with a thematic, with your outline for the thematic call. Although we should try to avoid duplications. So you should make it clear in your outline where, you know, where the borders are. And we stated that in the funding information as well. The closer you get, the more you should, you know, say what your ideas and where are the limits.
I have yet another question for you, Berit, and this goes back to when we talked about feedback, because we had a question when someone asked whether you can feedback on the proposals given, and you clearly said that might be a challenge for us, as we want to give a similar platform to everyone. But now comes in another angle from it, whereby we have a question on the transparent feedback or scoring with regards to the proposals that have been handed in, and if you will give people feedback as a learning point.
Well, that is a tricky question, actually, and I understand that there's a need for this transparency. All I can say at the moment is that we are working on that. It is, at the moment, it is not planned to, you know, publish anything on the website. What we do is we are going to publish the projects or the outlines who won. But the scoring is also difficult because, you know, we had like 200 outlines per thematic call. What we do is like first we have a look together with the IKI SEC about the exclusion criteria, and then the officers at BMU also have a very close look content-wise. And we can't give all the outlines to an external evaluation, because that costs a lot of money, and we need to limit this, you know. I mean, this would also like lengthen the process, and then you would wait like 2 years to actually get the results. So our interest, like we try, you know, to find a compromise. We only give a few outlines which we think can be successful. We give to this external evaluation, and then this external evaluation works with scores. I don't know if this is so well. Yeah, I mean, that's the best answer I can give at the moment. What we would like to do is in the future to give a more individual feedback, and it is possible that you give us a call or write an email, and we try to answer or to you know, to speak to you about the lessons learned and what were the deficiencies and the weaknesses maybe of the outline. But as Ina already said, and all the others, sometimes it's not about outlines not being good enough. It's because others are just better and match somehow a political direction also from BMU. So it's really difficult, and sometimes I hate this job when I have to disappoint so many people who were really working hard on these outlines. But it's at the moment, this is the best we can do.
Thank you very much, Berit. And as I mentioned to everyone, please keep on checking the IKI website and the information that we post on the IKI website as we update it on almost a weekly basis. Thank you. My next question now, I would like to go to Manya. And it seems, Manya, we are having questions where people would like to know if the funding can be applied for realization of pilot or demonstration projects. Manya, we still can't hear you.
Thank you, Sarah. Okay, fine. Yes, it's a very good question. And actually, yes, funding can be applied to for the realization of pilot or demonstration plans if it fits into the overall project, and of course if it meets the requirements for funding under the but I do want to add that we do not fund pure research projects. There can be research involved, of course, but it's not like if the goal is to do some research on certain topics, then this is probably not the best funding line for it. We go more for implementation, of course. Thank you.
I also still hold on, Manya, because I have still a question for you, and that is if the cost for the midterm and final evaluation will be covered by the IKI.
Evaluation costs, as Berit said earlier in the presentation, will be covered by IKI. Yes, you do not plan, you do not have to integrate evaluation costs for midterm evaluation or final evaluation in your budget. Yes.
One more question, Manya, before I let you go, because you're the one responsible for the stages 1 and stages 2 of the application process. And here there's a question whereby people are asking if the application phase or before the starting of the implementation of the project they should plan for 2 years in advance because this is the time it takes, or what's your thought about it?
My thought, you mean like the time span, like the 2 years
the time
it needs
span
from applying to, yes. It's a long time, but that's my personal thought, but I think I share it with many of my colleagues. And we all work hard on shortening that time. But still, we also think that it's very good to have as I said earlier, very well-developed project proposals. It's a bit tricky that in 2 years, like you talk about phase 1 and phase 2 of the application process, the entire time span may be 2 years at the moment. It may also be shorter. Yeah, it depends also now whether you include a preparation phase, even though we recommend it. It depends on your project, of course, and I'm talking about lines, funding lines 1 to 11 now. But then it's a bit tricky that the political agenda of the partner countries may change during these 2 years, of course, and then we have to adapt to that. But on the other hand, it's good to have to build networks in the process and get to know the political institutions, the partner institutions, like for instance, Ministry of Environment of the partner country better, and really take your time to elaborate a good network in the country with local actors that has to be built sometimes or already exists. I think it's also tricky that, of course, your local partners and also your political partners, they want to start right away. When you inform them about 20 million IKI project coming, then at the same time saying, oh, it may take another year until it's here. Of course, some partners may not like it, or they may not have the means to wait so long, or yeah, this is something, and this is why we try to we're working hard on shortening the time span between the end of the preparation phase when you hand in your full proposal and the start of the project. That's our goal now. Thank you.
Thanks, Manya. Before you go off, I would just like to bring up yet another question that we discussed with you at the beginning, and this was on the preparation phase and the costs that are covered under the preparation phase. Yeah, and related to this, there's a question that if there are 4 different partners from different countries, does the preparation phase also include country visits? Basically it refers back to what is allowed in this preparation phase, or what costs can be covered during this preparation phase.
Thank you, Sarah. A very good point. Well, we explicitly encourage you to visit all partner countries during the preparation phase. That means that the preparation phase might be quite costly, And that is then part of the total cost of the overall project in the end, but it's worth it. So it's really, so we encourage you to, if the pandemic allows, we encourage you to visit the partner countries, especially when you are working in the field, in natural resources, in forest and agriculture and biodiversity issues, where you have pilot areas, where you have certain areas where you want to work. We encourage you to visit these areas, to talk to the communities or talk to local partners, involve them there. So that is probably very key to having a successful project. And the idea is, of course, that part of the consortium, of course, maybe not everyone, but part of the consortium visits also the other countries. So you build a strong network there, you can have workshops there. But under coronavirus conditions, of course, this may not be possible, unfortunately. And then, of course, you may, as Berit said earlier, you may have like video conferences instead, of course. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Maya, for the clarification, and we are almost coming to the end of our session this afternoon. But before, the first person we started with was Frank, and I would like to end the discussion as well with you, Frank. And we have a question with reference to I think it's priority area number 11. And it goes like, do we have to cover all sectors, fishery, forestry, and agriculture?
Yes, and the answer is simple, no. It is not prescribed to include all three sectors. You can decide on 1, 2, or 3. And yeah, it is not prescribed. So it's a very straightforward answer.
Yes. Thank you. Straight and short to end us. I would like to, we are now at the end of our session today. I would like to thank everyone who participated in this session today. Could you please put the next slide? Kindly note that all the information that has been provided today is available on the IKI website. You can also go on the website and get funding information, funding priorities, as well as the FAQ section where we will update some of the questions, some of the answers that you have had here today. If you're planning to apply for the thematic call, kindly note that the deadline is on 10th March 2021, 23:59 hours Central European Time. Please feel free to reach out to us via email on ikisecretariat@zug.org, and you can also follow us using our Twitter channel, IKI BMU.